Hello there, beautiful marketers. I'm John Sarakis, and this is The Climb, brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. Our show is about journeys. It's a podcast where we talk to digital agencies about business, marketing, technology, and everything in between there. So if you want tips, tricks, tools, mentorship, join our, it's a peer group of agency owners where we have constant communication via Slack for all your questions and concerns. And we have a bi-weekly call. We, in fact, have one today in a little over an hour where you get to stay on top of the latest and greatest. We're going to be talking about some of the things we're talking on today's show regarding the end of Q3, the beginning of Q4. And, of course, we have an exceptional meeting where I am about to announce in the coming weeks one of the speakers that we're going to have, which is a guy that's just completely fantastic. So if you're interested, go ahead and visit us at digitalmastermind.com. Shoot me an email, Jon, Jon, at digitalmastermind.com, and I'd love to hear from you. Remember, the show's live, so engage, join in, say whatever you want to say, be a part of the conversation is what I'm saying here. And today, I want to go ahead and welcome my co-host, good friend, business partner, David McGraw. Why don't you come out here?
It's good to be back.
Boom, boom, boom. Weeks of vacation. You went to Tennessee. I went to New England. Oh, it's amazing. You also had a birthday party with for your lovely little Emma.
Yeah. You went up to New England to see the leaves change.
Yeah.
And when I flew into Tennessee, I got a little taste of that, so that was excellent.
Never seen that before. And, when I told people what I was going to do, like, hey, I'm going to go watch the leaves change, like, that sounds like watching water boil. I'm like, no, I'm like not going to sit there and
and wait for it.
Yeah, hit it with a heat lamp or whatever it would take to make them change. But no, yeah, it was fantastic. Well rested. I'm glad to be here.
So typically I like to go up north around like August, September, because in Florida, like that's just when you're so over summer.
Yeah.
And you need a cooling, refreshing, break. So I definitely love doing that. But I thought our summer was pretty mild this year. I didn't think it was bad at all.
This summer, it rained. It rained a whole
got a lot of rain.
Yeah, it rained a whole hell of a lot. The one thing I did take away from the vacation, because I take it on those dates, and I think vacations are important. We could do a whole show on that. Right. I typically try one that's like a week in May, and then I'll do like a week in like October. My birthday's around there, my wife's is, and anniversary. But this time I combined them both and did the 2 weeks, which I think I'm overly American. Like I think 2 weeks is almost too long for a vacation.
Yeah, if it's any longer, you call it holiday.
Right.
Like Europeans.
Yes, I'm on holiday. But I have English friends that like they take a day off and like I'm on holiday today. It's like, no,
yeah.
Bro. Like you're just taking the day off.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, the vacation is important. But
what's the longest vacation you've taken? Like
14 days.
Yeah, all right. You taken 14. Where'd you go for 14 days?
Italy for my honeymoon.
Okay.
Or Spain. Actually, sorry, it was Spain. Barcelona and wait, no, that was only 10 days. Yeah, that's and then we went back.
Yeah, so 10 days. Like I've done the 10, but yeah, this is like the full I'm back in elementary school over Christmas break 14.
Right.
And
yeah.
Nice. It was interesting. It was good to take it.
I would prefer honestly to take 2 1 week vacations.
Broken up.
Yes.
That's what I normally do. Like I'll do the one in May and do the one in October. And the other thing too learned is I'm not straddling it over a quarter again. That's just, yeah. Speaking of
what a segue.
That is the perfect segue. So if you're going to take your vacation, take it in between, in the middle of a quarter. And and today what we're here to talk about is the power of quarters, right? So the power of quarters, and what we mean by that is essentially breaking up the year so you can measure things instead of on a month-by-month basis. You can measure them in quarters, right? Because you want to keep everything evenly distributed and fair. And the fair part is giving yourself a realistic picture of the peaks and the troughs. Because as you know, like, all right, so if you're measuring month to month, you could have, one great month. And if you're going to say, all right, this is what the following months are going to look like after that, especially in the agency business, that's not a realistic picture at all.
Right. Yeah. Month to month will trick you into thinking something's happening that it's not. I mean, quarter by quarter is much more of a momentum, review rather than a surprise. Like anyone can have a knockout month, but if the 2 months that surround it are below average, then are you doing well?
Right.
So, it's tough.
And I think it gives recovery time. If you've had that bad month, right, or whatever, especially in our business, there's sales cycles, so it's going to be anywhere from 8 weeks to 3 months. Excuse me. And with that, all right, in the first 4 weeks, nothing has happened. There's going to be some uptime that you're going to have to put some work in where something's going to generate a little bit later, and that quarter is something that's been very beneficial to us.
Right. Yeah, there are some hangups with the quarterly approach as well, because we have some people that a payment comes a day late. Well, that drops into the next quarter. It's not in the previous quarter, so some employees get pissed about that, because if a client doesn't pay within the quarter, then they have to wait 3 months for that to get credited. So there's no perfect solutions. This is just what works for us.
No, and kind of a tangent, if you're negotiating with especially companies that sell product like copiers and things like that, if you buy toward the end of a quarter, the deals that you'll get are amazing. Even with, I think it was HubSpot, they're like, all right, dude, this is the end of the quarter. What do we got to do to make this deal? And the discounts they were throwing out were impressive. I was all right. So a little negotiation tactic. When it comes to cars, also buy as soon as they're getting their inventory. A whole nother podcast on negotiations. All right. So I think, the first point I want to get into here as the benefit of a quarter, we could talk about the goods and the bads in each of these, is that it creates the consistent opportunity to review progress and refocus on the things to work on, right? So taking that time to reflect back and look, all right, what did we do in this quarter? How did that quarter go? And I think it's holistic, as well as the individual reviews with employees is paramount.
One of the things that I think is key for management is that you have to take notes or keep notes for the quarter, because what you don't want your quarterly review to be about is what happened last week. And that's what happens.
That's a great tip. Everybody should write that down.
Right. Because if you don't take notes for the big successes or the failures, back in the first month of the quarter, most people don't remember it. And so you don't want your review to be based on, last week and then their, ratings. It needs to be a full quarter review.
So how do you, where do you put your notes? Right. Yeah. So you put them on like their file, their name. Is there like a,
well, we have a folder for each employee, which, their offer letters in there, and every review is in there. And if there's anything significant that I need to remember about their performance, I put a note in there.
And is it like, just curiously, is it a separate, separate document, or is it like all on one document?
Just a text document. I've done it both ways, honestly. Sometimes I've created one document called Q1 notes, or Q2 notes. And then sometimes I put a note right in their folder. So
that's interesting. Like we all have these little different ways that we go about something, regardless that we go, and we never stick to that one way of doing it.
Well, you're constantly improving.
Constantly, yeah. You don't evolve, you can't survive. You can't survive, you can't thrive. So the other thing too, in quarters, I think breaking projects, right? So we took it upon ourselves in, I think it was Q2, to say, hey, in Q3, we need to create a new website and launch it, right?
Right.
And we both had our experiences with websites dragging on for years. And that was an initiative that I think was very successful, that should be celebrated, because literally we made the plan. We said, this is what's going to happen. And we also had repercussions. Is if this is not something we complete in, this amount of time, this is what we're going to do if we don't. I'm happy we didn't have to follow through with any of those. And yeah, I think we have a fantastic looking website, and the whole team rallied to make sure that we got it on time, and essentially within budget.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to the, Ryan and Ian, and everyone else. I think Eric was, a big player in that. But I mean, the website looks awesome. Like, it's the best website Oyova's ever had. It looks professional. It looks expensive, which I like. It looks luxurious. Yeah, it looks
got
great.
The luster.
But most important, I love that we got it done. You know how many internal projects we've been a part of that always get pushed aside. So
yeah, that's the thing, and that's where it's that we committed to it, we set the initiative out, and we got it done, which is fantastic. And I love to have those things because that just feels good rather than all these open loops. Like it's like going into a task you didn't finish,
right,
or being reminded of something that wasn't complete like years ago. I hate that. That's just like residue.
Yep.
All right. And then going into number 2, which kind of touched on some of the points I had in number 1, is it, breaking up in quarters and having these reviews creates an appropriate time to discuss money and salary. So why don't you expand on that?
So I once read or heard from someone that the amount of money that you should pay somebody in their job is enough so that you don't have to discuss it, right? So that means they're comfortable with the amount they're getting and you're comfortable with the amount you're paying. And it's a perfect symbiotic, balance. You're balanced. Mm-hmm. And so one of the worst things that you can do in the employer-employee relationship is have to address that imbalance. So with our quarterly reviews, we basically just set up a scenario where the only time where it's appropriate to talk about money is during that time. We're not going to adjust anything mid-quarter, period. And our employees know it, so they know what they have to, we give them the stage to discuss that when it gets to that time. Mm-hmm. And I like, that way everything's smooth in the middle of the quarter. At the end, we can have that discussion. And we're very aggressive raiser, I guess. If people are earning it, they get it. Yeah. And I don't want to wait for them to ask. I try to be ahead of that.
And I like that approach to the employee salaries. Like, hey, it's that perfect balance. What I've found interesting though is some people are never balanced, and no matter how much you give them, like they continually want more. So I think it's a solid control mechanism to have. All right, cool. We got 3 months to talk about that because we just had that conversation. We're now balanced. And so far as my books are concerned in my mind, right, so we can have that conversation later.
Also, if you really, if somebody's like really adamant about it, then now I've got a quarterly performance report that we can review. And if the team performance didn't increase by 5%, then why, then you explain to me why you think you're worth, 5% more. So, and that it's, I once gave a talk on this topic, like be prepared if you're on the employee side, you need to keep notes of your successes for the quarter. Don't come to a quarterly review without a list of shit you got done that was amazing. If you can't be your own advocate, I'm sure not going to be. Right? So
you gotta sell yourself.
Exactly. So keep your own record notes and be prepared to talk about all the things you succeeded on, and make sure they're big. Just doing your job is not good enough. Like, what are the things that you went over and above, or the results are, better than average? If they're just, you did your job, like, all right, congratulations, you did your job.
Perfect.
You get to keep it.
You get a bumper sticker.
Right.
Never got that. Not ever. Do you ever get perfect attendance?
No.
All right. The number 3, want to build steady increases in pay, which feels like growth faster than once a year, essentially compounding raises. Yeah, this is what we do. I think our minimum raise is 1% per quarter. What this does, somebody always has something to look for, and it keeps you in check with inflation, right? So essentially the yearly inflation is around 3.5% to like 4.5%. I believe the government does a 4% raise on all their employees. That's something that we also do. So no matter what, somebody's always getting a raise. So they're not doing that kickback questioning scenario of, I haven't had a raise in 2 years, which is just not a good place you want to be in.
Yeah, and I think in today's workforce, constant reinforcement is needed. And, when you compound the raise.
Let's unpack that one. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I just, the yearly, back in the day, you used to get a yearly review. And, you had to wait 12 months to review how you're doing or how the company values you, Mm-hmm. So, and then the amount of disappointment you could create, if you were doing your raises in a yearly process and somebody was waiting 12 months and they thought they were doing a pretty good job, and then they get to their review and the employer's like, no, you're not getting your raise, you're probably losing an employee. Right? Yeah. They're looking. They're pissed.
Right.
I mean, in a quarterly, if you have a bad quarter, and so you said our minimum is 1%, that's only if you succeeded. If you had some failures, I mean, people sometimes don't get a raise for their quarterly. But they have all they have to do is wait 3 months and do some good work, and they're right back in it. So it's not as devastating.
We would hold somebody back from a 1%.
Oh, just, like if their actions caused a client to leave, if there was a monumental screw up and we lost revenue.
Yeah. Like write-ups, essentially. Yeah. Okay. And with I think also with the quarters, and I guess to touch on it again, somebody has a quick recovery time, right? So it's all right, made a mistake, I can recover, like you said. I think the other point is how many people there's got to be a study out there that says like a certain percentage, maybe half, 75% of people just hate on themselves or beat themselves up. So when you're coming up to that year, you didn't make all the list of your successes. Those people are potentially looking for a job 3 months before their yearly review. And I know a ton of agencies, they still do yearly reviews. Some don't even do reviews, right? So there's not a conversation that's happening letting somebody know, all right, this is the trajectory of your career in this company, as well as, all right, this is where you currently stand based on the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. And our industry changes and moves so fast, but we're managing our number one resource, which is our people, on a yearly basis. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I think you definitely have to do quarterly reviews compared to a year review. But
I also think the quarterly raises, though, is huge because I saw a survey and it said like, oh yeah, we do, yearly raises. Like, oof. I don't think that. I think that's too jagged. You could have 1% raises, or some you're going to give bonuses. What do you have, a giant reserve account that you're saving all this money in and having to really plan in? It's those, what are those, like really strong concrete plans that everybody creates that don't do a damn thing for the next year. So I think it's just poor planning. And I think this is a much more flexible way to go about it.
Got our first live comment. Got a question here from.
All right. Some interaction. There we go.
Should you share your achievements prior to your review? Send a list to discuss prior to the meeting, or hold on to those items and bring those up conversationally in person? That's a great question.
That is a great question.
What do you think?
What I like to say, I'd like to see them ahead of time. I would. But if I were to give them to somebody, I wouldn't send them ahead of time. I'd rather sell them in person.
I would definitely agree with that. You want to come in looking like you're prepared and you've got stuff to talk about it, and you don't want to give them time to come up with reasons of why you don't think that's an achievement.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like the surprise factor. Now, it's funny Beth asked that question because she did send me a list of her achievements before our review. I didn't have anything to refute of those, but I thought it was just the fact that she had the list was excellent, and that's what people need to do. Again, nobody's going to be your advocate if you aren't your own advocate. So
I like that. It sounds like another bumper sticker. We got perfect attendance, and you got to be your own advocate.
Have to. And then just before we move on from this topic, I mean, I don't think people understand the power of compounding your raise. I mean, if the first quarter you get 1%, and then the second quarter you get 1% of that, and then the third quarter you get 1% of those two, you're really ending up at like 4.3 or 4. I don't know what the math is exactly, but it's more than a 4% raise, and it's closing in on 5%. And if somebody was offered me a job that said you're going to get pretty much a 5% raise every year, I'm happy as hell with that. And there's a good chance if you did a good job, like just a little over and above, one of those quarters you might get 2%, because you mentioned the minimum, but we also can go up to a 2 and a 3% raise just for a quarter for 3 months of work.
Right. So in 10 years, if you hit the minimums with no write-ups, your salary is increased by 50% if you stayed in the same position.
That's huge. It's actually more than 50% because of compounding. It's more than 50% because of compounding. So after 10 years, you could probably get 50% at 8 years.
Got it. Little
even bigger.
Yeah.
So
no, those are huge. And I'm like, somebody says like the whole math equation. Now I'm literally trying to work that out, and I don't even have a chance of getting it.
From the employer perspective, you know, it could feel like you're accelerating your salary too fast, your salary costs, and you know, our number one expense is wages. So that was a concern at first, and we did have to adjust down to what our normal rates are because we started at a minimum of 2%, and salaries were just increasing faster than our revenue was growing, and that didn't make sense. And I don't like taking things away that we give out, so we just had to make an adjustment of what the normal is, and then let things happen from there. Because you know, it's all about trying to create a scenario and a system that keeps everyone happy long term. We don't want churn in our employees. When we get a good team, when we have a good culture, we want to keep that, and we want to make sure that they're rewarded and they get the feedback that they need in order to continue to grow and to keep that progression going.
Yep, I agree. And I think keeping everyone happy internally and externally is just a healthy sign of a company. You know, strong culture, happy clients, things tend to go the way that you want. And of course, we're going to have our biggest expense is always going to be labor. We're not a product company, we're a service company.
To a note that I know we don't have on our list, we also added a new question on our quarterly review this year about how they feel the company is being managed. So it's sort of like a little reflection back on management of how does what's the morale for the company. And you know, the reviews that I did, I'm sure that the person answering the question was probably you know,
intimidated.
Yeah. But we also had our managers ask, you know, for theirs, so I felt like those were a little bit more legit. But I mean, you know, that quarterly review, I need to hear from them what we can do better. You know, things. So it's important for management to understand, you know, what are they doing, what are we doing right and wrong.
And it's weird, man. If you do a anonymous survey, that to me, I don't know. Like, can you trust that? Are people really going to say what they want? I worked at this other company where there was like a survey box that was just set up to undermine managers. It's like,
yeah.
So it's just, and it's weird. But I do believe that we need like a 360 view, and maybe it's something that we can experiment with. I'd love to hear from others, potentially in our audience, that have seen that, you know, in companies. How do they take a pulse on, you know, the person in the entry level, you know, and everybody in between on how everything really appears?
To me, I mean, speaking of the 360, I mean, I believe that the number one job of the CEO or whoever's running the business is to be profitable and make sure everybody's paychecks are secured. That's the ultimate measure. And most people out there may not have experienced this. If you've ever worked for a company that had to tell you, please don't cash your check for a week, or, you know, anything like that, that is the worst feeling in the world, knowing that your livelihood is at risk and maybe might not be there.
Have you worked for a company that happened?
Yeah, I've had this one scenario once where you had, and this was before I even did direct deposit, where you had to rush, and like the first half of the company got paid, but you know, the people that cashed their checks late didn't.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that is ridiculous. What kind of company?
It's technology. It's, you know, the startup world, you know, had those scenarios a lot. We've had companies here in Jacksonville famously, you know, crash and burn like that. But to ask your employees, so again, that's the reflection of the CEO. If the CEO puts the company in a situation where employees' paychecks are at risk, then that's a failure of a CEO.
I also think, I want to jump in, I think it's the failure of anybody working at that company that if that's actually happening, you need to go and find another company. Like, that is not healthy at all.
No, not at all.
We had one client that was like that, and found out and ended up parting ways because he would go and cash his big party checks for the week, and then it turns out the employees didn't have any of the money, and those were a marketing team that we were working with, and it just was, that's not something I could tolerate for long. Yeah, it was just really bad. And I've known that these companies have existed, but I can say thankfully I haven't worked for one. I'm going to knock on wood. I haven't worked with one, never missed one paycheck or one pay period ever. So in paying anybody. And yeah, that just breaks my heart. I can't imagine the stress if somebody has a family and that's what they have to deal with. That's just unacceptable.
So I heard also recently a restaurant that wasn't paying the matching Social Security tax for their employees. And just the way we run payroll, it's automatic. Like we automatically pay that tax. The payroll company takes it out, and they won't even process it without us doing that. I didn't even know that was a thing. And that responsibility falls on the employee. They still owe that money. You know, and if the employer doesn't, yeah. I mean, the employer owes their match.
Money, right?
Correct.
But you're never going to get it if they file bankruptcy and they just disappear.
Right. But I mean, each employee needs to make sure that the proper Social Security tax and FICA and all that is being taken out of their paycheck, because they're going to owe that at the end of the year if it's not taken out. I mean, so that, you know, just another thing. Like, again, as the CEO, it's my job to make sure all those things you don't worry about. Because if you have to worry about them, you're not doing your job the best you can.
I did get hit with something similar to that. I did get paid for a job like really, really early in my career when I was actually working for somebody else instead of my own business. And they submitted it to the IRS. I had paid everybody else out, and then I didn't really make any money. I gave them a deal. I thought it was a favor, and I got stuck with a bill for 20 grand in taxes. Yeah. And it was just like, wow, it's a good lesson. So it's, you know, education's expensive. That's what I chalked it up to. Wasn't going to become a victim out of it. But I think that's great. I've never even thought to check for FICA and the Social Security. But just, you assume that those things are automated. And I guess
they are for the most part.
If you have a company like Paychex or something, I can't imagine that you can tweak numbers. If it's was this a mom and pop restaurant?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but it's just a sign of, you know, bad things happening at a company.
What is the savings there? 3% for the company?
Right. Yeah.
On just
especially for wait staff.
Right. Yeah. You have people making $2.14 an hour, and then you're going to go ahead and cut them out by 3-4%.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Not cool, man. Yeah. Terrible. All right. So number 4 in this amazing list, based on the power of quarters, is this: when you break things up into quarters, it creates the opportunity to produce a documented performance history, not only of your individual staff, but also for the company, whether that's something analytical that you want to reference later. But when it comes to the staff, you can determine patterns, and in those patterns, you can really coach people to be the best, or to work at the best of their abilities.
So, you know, if you look at things in months, there's already an imbalance because February only has 28 days compared to like a July. Mm-hmm. So February is always going to be a down month. So that doesn't make sense, right? But quarter 1 can match up to quarter 2. Huh?
And January's got 5 weeks. So, I mean, February can break down to like 3.5.
Right. Which, you know, for certain business models is kind of weird. Like, I remember when I was a partner in the landscaping, you charge, you know, a monthly fee for landscaping services. Mm-hmm. But some months you actually get more, you know, a whole nother trip of, you know, your lawn mowed than the others, but you don't charge more. And so but it's funny, like we would have customers that would say, well, February's only, you know, sure, I shouldn't have to pay the same amount. I'm like, well, come July, you know, we're going to be there 5 times or something like that. So, yeah, quarter review versus and creating the document. You know, process document is one of the things that we really excel at, and creating the quarterly review, especially with Google Forms. We use Google Forms. It produces content for us to save in the employee file, and it's self-documenting, and we have record of your performance quarter after quarter after quarter. I think that's important.
Does that Google form go into the same spreadsheet, or is it a different spreadsheet?
It's a different spreadsheet, but that's not, I mean, the spreadsheet I don't really care about. After quarterly reviews are done, Shanoa, our administrative assistant, goes in and saves a PDF of everyone's answers in their employee folder. So we have a historical PDF of each review for each employee, which I then reference in the next quarter review.
So how often have you had to go back and said like, all right, last year we dealt with this exact same thing according to your file? You know what I'm saying? Can you speak to any of that?
I mean, mostly it's compared to previous quarter. I mean, something that was I don't think we've ever had, and I wouldn't keep an employee that repeated the same thing from year to year to year. You got to improve quicker than that. So I don't think we've ever had anyone that had something similar happen, 4 quarters ago.
Yeah, but constant improvement, which that's what it's all about. If you're not improving, you're dying and fading.
But since we use the quarterly review for goals as well, setting goals and achieving goals, you need a document that you can refer back to and say, these were the goals that were set forth at the beginning of the quarter. Did you achieve them?
Yeah. And I think, company, as long as, personal goals and company goals align, things tend to run a little bit more successful. The scariest thing to me is a question I'll ask people that, employees, and it's just like, okay, well, what do you want? And when they can't tell me what it is that they want,
can't be happy.
Oh, yeah, that to me is frightening. It's like, okay, well, if you don't know what you want, and that means we can't align that with what the company wants, which we're pretty clear on what that is, then we have a problem here. So that's something to anybody that's an employee or that has their employees, I highly recommend is, if you can, dig down and find out what it is that they want. And it's all right, there's what motivates them, but what do they want? Do they want glory? Do they want, more money? Do they want better tools, better working environment? When you can get down to those types of things, it's a whole deeper level of satisfaction and happiness.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right, so coming up to number 5, El Cinco. Number 5, when it comes to the power of quarters, it allows management to keep a pulse on the morale of the company. And this is something that is super, super important, because if you don't have a pulse on what's happening, you don't know what's happening, right? No other way to put that. You've probably heard horror stories about companies having walkouts, or that employee that just one day decided to leave and never come back, and they're going to ghost you. Oh, they were so happy. They loved me. Well, potentially it's because you weren't checking in when you should be checking in, and quarters give you that power and ability.
100%. And you just touched on it on the last point is, being able to hear what they want, hear what they need. And, you got to have that conversation. You have to ask during the review, you have to ask tough questions. Like, what's your feedback for me? What do you feel like you're supported well? Do you feel like you have the tools you need? You almost have to twist people's arms to get something out of that. But, it's super important. The morale of your company is, if you don't have the good morale, then your culture is going to suck, and managing the company is going to suck. So what's everybody doing here?
Yeah. And it also gives you the opportunity where there's some people, great people, that are having something that's in their personal life where you say like, hey, that sucks, get help there. But you have to check that at the door when you come in here. We're professionals. So you can't go and say, I'm not going to catch half the passes today because I'm fighting with my, with my girlfriend. Like, no, you go out there and you do your job. So I think it also gives that ability to give that pep talk. And once you have a little bit of that information, that's all right, cool. Let's lay the cards on the table and let's build a solid foundation from here.
I mean, easier said than done, right?
These are soft skills.
Yeah. I 100% agree. If the people that bring their outside issues inside the business, man, those are tough people to manage. But there's some rock stars that just sometimes it's there. But I've seen people improve. I've seen it where just saying like the phrase, you need to check that at the door. Like that stays outside. Do not bring that in the house. And I've seen that be very helpful. Some people need to be reminded from it from time to time, but there's people that are overly emotional. Their emotions can get the best of them. We're all humans. Most of us have them. Granted, we've met some that don't. And if those are going to if they're negatively swayed, it's going to have a negative impact on your business. So if you turn those things around, have a positive approach, you're professional, it can be dramatic what's improved and achieved. Yeah, 100%. So is that
list. That's our list. But I think there's some other things that are worth talking about when it comes to a quarter-to-quarter basis, right? So we're in the position of potentially taking on a new client, right? And this new client the changes would be dramatic once it rolled out to what we believe it can be. And this is something that we're now in our Q4 looking at, which would most likely happen in Q1. And this is where that planning starts. So this is kind of where the other power of quarters is, okay, we're not looking at the entire year. Granted, we'll come up with our year mantra, and I'm sure we'll mention that on a show. This year is actually the name of the show, which I think is Gnarly the Climb. But because it's been a journey, and who in the hell thought it'd be a journey like this? Wow.
Right. That makes it even better.
Totally. Which I got to give a shout out to the hotels.com commercial. That is the best commercial I've seen that's spoken about, 2020. What's happening.
Yeah, I love
Have
it.
you seen it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
great.
Dude. Nothing like watching another man get slapped. But so this is the time where, all right, we're going to look at the next year, at a very, very macro level. But in the next quarter, we're going to say, okay, this is what we're teeing up to do. And that goes from sales, marketing, operations, through and through every other department that's in the company.
So, I hate the yearly, the year plan thing. That's just ridiculous. Things change. So when you manage in quarters, you can pivot quickly towards other goals, depending on what happens. And the thing I started doing with this past quarterly review is sending out like a memo of the results of the quarter from a financial perspective to the leadership team and kind of describe why I think the quarter went the way it did and what I foresee the forecast going to be, and using the quarterly numbers as, the basis for that, and backing it up with numbers, so I think that was a good addition. I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah, I think those are strong. And what would you say now that we're coming into Q4 based on quarterly, what are the things that we are going to put in place based on the knowledge that we have in Q3 for Q4?
I don't think we're changing anything according to the plan. I think, the one thing I just noted and tried to inspire everyone is that, Q4 is where champions are made. This is where you earn champion. This is where, this is how you get trophy walls, right? Is this last quarter, not time to take off a month. There's some people that take a whole month off between like Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'm like, it must be nice.
I was helping somebody last night talking about the it's a person that's shifting their business, and they're essentially changing what they do. They work in events, right? So virtual is a part of it. So framed out what it is that they want to do. And I said something similar. I said, Q4 is where the professionals play, because you're fighting for holiday money. If you're not selling something related to holidays, then you have to be at the best of your best, because every procrastinator, especially in an economy like this, is going to say, let's just move that over to 2021. Let's move that over to 2021. So you have to really entice and persuade them to spend money like no other. There's no other quarter like that. Q1's pretty easy. I mean, granted, there's some hangover based on things they did the previous year. If it's B2C, they spent all their holiday money, so that's granted. Q2 is pretty easy. Q3, but yeah, Q4 definitely. It's a champion's game.
So the interesting thing about, we started the quarterly review process probably 7 years ago, and I got it from DMG. A shout out to Digital Mastermind Group. Somebody came in and explained how they do that, and I instantly was like, all right, we're adopting this. This is 100% what we need to do. So now that I've been measuring quarter by quarter, both employees and the business, you can start to see some trends. And Q1 has been our strongest quarter consistently for years. And I think that's new budgets get approved. It's, people are like, hey, it's the new year. We're going to do this. All their initiatives are, and even take this year, Q1 was largely not impacted by COVID. Really didn't set in until, April, really, or mid-March.
Yeah. And I think for us too, it's a lot of that pushover. We're going to see people like, okay, it's a 2021 initiative. We'll launch it right after the new year.
Yep.
The hangover's worn off, and then we'll go ahead and pull the trigger.
You know, summer has been our. It's weird. Like summer. I don't want to say it.
Summer was always explosive on the marketing side because my belief, I don't really have a ton of data on this, but a couple people saying it, things slow down in the summer.
Right.
Kids are on vacation, everybody's taking vacation. So it gives them a time to look and see the problems in their business and like, okay, well, now we have time to work on these things.
So this is the first summer we don't have our big educational client. So this has probably been the nicest summer because for 10 years, summer was the time where we almost basically were like working overtime to get new things in place for the upcoming school year. And so while everyone else was taking, you know, we even at a point kind of mandated employees to take their vacations in spring or fall because there was that much demand need during the summer. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Take your vacation because you're not taking it over the summer.
Right.
Be in here sweating.
Only for the people that were on that project. I mean, everybody else was fine, but yeah, summers, you know, that has been crazy for us. And Christmas, they're all good. I mean, all the quarters are good. Q4, sometimes you get people rushing in to get their stuff done because they want to launch on, January 1st.
And I think if you have an enthusiastic approach to any of them, yeah, they're going to be great. They're all going to have their challenges. But if you're, I use the word a lot, if you're a professional and you're dynamic, then you can succeed if you have the tools at your disposal. And also the team, right? We have a really solid team. We've made a lot of hires. So we're going to be putting those into place, into use. So we have a lot of initiatives. So we're teed up to have an explosive 2021, but reiterating again, we only do that in a quarter by quarter, outlook because we can shift and pivot. We're a private company. We don't have a bunch of, stocks, but even public companies, they're quarter based. They don't hit their quarters. That's where there's big sweeping changes that happen in the C-suite.
Not like I would ever go take Oyova public. I mean, I guess never say never, but we're already kind of running our business like a corporation that is on the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, the document that I put together that shows our performance is exactly what a CFO would have to put together. I mean, maybe a more simplistic view, but I like that we're already doing those things.
Which document?
It's the one that you never look at, that you have access to.
Oh, yeah, I got that one. Yeah. I live quarter by quarter. Yeah. But in any event, the one thing though with public companies is they have those earnings calls, Right. Oh, dude, you ever listen?
I would love to do those.
Oh, not when they're not good, man. When they're not good because you haven't seen something. Those are pretty brutal.
Yeah, but just like that summary that I sent out with the forecast, that's kind of like my version of that. Yeah, I wrote a couple paragraphs about how the reason why, like Q3 for us was a down quarter only compared to a record-setting Q2. Mm-hmm. Q3 on its own was a great quarter. Every company would be happy to have our Q3. But it's so interesting about perspective when you had such a monster Q2 that even a very successful Q3 was like, oh man,
it's context comparison.
Yeah. Q2 was monstrous, and that'll be interesting what we come up with next year.
Which is one of the interesting things about us is that we have. Most are tied into the revenue. So when that doesn't go the way that it's going to go, it's a negative, impact. So not hitting, some quarter numbers, which I think is something that scares people. But at the same time, that negativity is what creates all that positivity because it's a driver.
So and there's a lot of people that just don't like numbers, so they don't do the quarterly check-in because they just don't want to know. I
think it's what motivates people, getting into people's world and seeing all right, what drives them, right? So what are the things that are on their dashboard? Everybody has different drivers. And I had a friend, very, very successful real estate agent, not, one of those, weekend warriors. And he had a bunch of agents under him, and his top agent, he's like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and increase the probability of, the team hitting their goals. So he had some huge cash bonus. I don't know what it was. Like if you hit the goal, it was like $20,000-$30,000. And two of his top performers did worse than they ever did. And he was like, well, what's going on? Well, one of them just wasn't motivated by money, but he found out the other one that all of his money was given to his spouse. So she controlled everything. So it just was not a driver for him, and it kind of took the fun out of the game. So he switched everything to products. So you had some subscription service that you apply to, and then based on a point system, you get big screen TVs, cars, so on and so forth. And then everybody dramatically did better for the most part, right? So I think it's interesting to get and see what really motivates people, because it's not always money, because okay, they're either at a point where they have enough money and it's going somewhere to their family, or it's just something that's not even really on their radar. They have a job, they know they're good at what they do, and then they're going to get a paycheck, not looking at their Social Security or their FICA numbers.
Right. So we actually had a client back in the day that did that for companies, created employee reward programs. You could browse their website and buy products with your, Shroot bucks.
What were they called?
That's a little. Did you watch The Office much?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I wasn't hooked or anything on it.
Shroot bucks. Dwight Schrute created his own currency to spend within the office on one of the episodes. It's hilarious.
Right.
So we have Ian bucks here.
Oh, that's right. Which is kind of weird. It aligns him with Dwight.
Ooh, good point.
That show, I would get frustrated in that show, because to me it was just it's a comedy, I get it, but I was like, this is the most illogical thing. Like, who would work for this clown and who would tolerate this stuff?
Wow, you cannot literally evaluate The Office. Like, are you looking for like a hard-hitting drama out of these people?
I'm looking for something that's logical. I don't know. Humor is an interesting thing. It was cool, but the novelty like wears off. Like it'd be a good movie, but it was like, all right, this moron is going to. It's like, all right, dude, like this is just illogical to me, and I don't know. The novelty wore off.
So I will say that when it was live on TV, I didn't really watch it much. But when it, in syndication or basically Netflix, when you get to watch it all the way through, it's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, my wife crushed it. It's a well-written show. Love Steve Carell. Love a lot of the people on it. Just it wasn't one of the ones that hooked me. I don't even know of any comedy that I binged. I think I binged Shameless for a little bit a few years ago.
I got tired of that. It definitely fell off.
Season 3 or season 4, I was like, all right, I can see the formula. Right. Best comedy ever, though, is Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, nothing beats that.
See, I never enjoyed that.
See? All right. Well.
It's just, I just don't like that whiny old, just too much. Yeah. That's not my style of comedy.
We're in a fan of Seinfeld, I take it.
Oh, I love Seinfeld. So, but that's a lot of whining too. I mean, his entire career is based on whining.
Yeah.
So
yeah, to some extent. I think it's just putting yourself into situations where remarkably odd things happen. And if you have a different perspective on the world, they're not going to go the way that you anticipate. And it's a good formula for humor.
Have you ever seen Seinfeld live?
Have I ever seen Seinfeld live? Like the comedian?
Stand up? Yeah.
No, I don't think he's funny as a comedian. Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't think he's funny.
Yeah, especially now that he's like
drinking coffee in cars with comedians. That's a great show because the people he has on the show.
Right, right.
But yeah, I never thought he was funny. He was the weakest link on the show Seinfeld, but he was.
I don't know about that.
Who was the weakest link then?
They all shined at their own moments.
He's the worst actor on that show.
I don't know. His facial expressions. I don't know. I don't agree. That's fine though.
Okay. Well, watch the show, and when you see it now, you're gonna be like, man.
So the thing is I can't even watch it now. Like, there's something in me about movies and TV and all that stuff that when you like, it's time to archive it for me. Like, and when I see something with the giants, those old school giant cell phones, when I see movies or TV shows with those in it, that's when I'm like, all right, you're now too far removed from today's world. I can't watch you anymore.
Oh, wow. The story has no more value any longer, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that's the key for me is that like phone. If I see, unless it's a period piece, but Seinfeld's not a period piece, so I just can't watch it anymore.
Yeah, the technology gets you. Yeah. I think it's just I
love the 90s. But see, it's weird if you go back and watch Friends, which was basically around the same era. You don't see a lot of outdated technology like you do in Seinfeld. It's very, very interesting.
I can't watch another episode of Friends. I can't. Yeah.
But going back to why we started talking about this, Troop Bucks, the employee benefit thing. So one thing we started doing right now is, so Daniel just created a bunch of awesome automated tools for us, so that our weekly and monthly time report and account management tasks are all automated and created in Teamwork automatically with the information. So no more running reports. It's just automatically there. And so once we started using this API for Teamwork, as well as Google Sheets to like codify our business processes, now we're tracking every day who put their time in on time. And we know with an automated report who's a habitual abuser of not putting their time in. And we're going to, the person that wins after the quarter is going to win something like a gift card or, big screen TV, or we could do some kind of like employee program like that. That's a great idea. But that's brand new for Q4 is, every day you put in your time on time, you get a point.
Oh, it doesn't matter how much time you put in?
You have to put in at least 7. That's what we expect.
That's what 32 is 32 hours a week or whatever, the 80-something percent capacity.
No, 35. 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. I'll go ahead and anything else you want to add before I go ahead and sum up today's show? We're about at the hour mark.
No, sum it up.
All right. So number one, the power of quarter is it gives you a consistent opportunity to review progress, refocus on things to work on. Number 2, creates an appropriate time to discuss money and salary. 3, builds steady increases in pay, which feels like growth faster than once a year, essentially, getting compounding raises. Number 4, it produces a documented performance history for the company as well as for the team members. And number 5, it allows management to keep a pulse on the morale of the company. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to join the Digital Mastermind, go ahead and shoot me an email, JON@digitalmastermind.com. It was great hanging with y'all. Thank you so much for the comment and question, Beth, and we'll see you real soon. Bye now.